The battlefield burned beneath two suns. Smoke rose like dark waves across the broken sky. The human dropship came crashing through the clouds, flames trailing from its engines inside. Captain Ryan Hale gripped the controls with trembling hands. His armor cracked, his oxygen low, but his eyes still sharp as steel. The distress beacon from the alien royal transport was still blinking on his radar, and Command had ordered him to ignore it, but he didn't, because Ryan wasn't built to ignore those who were calling for help. He slammed the controls forward, diving into the storm of plasma fire. Alien artillery burned through the clouds, lighting the night like lightning from hell. "Captain will be shot down," shouted his co-pilot. But Ryan didn't answer. He was locked in, his heart steady, his jaw set. The distress call repeated, soft, weak, and desperate. "This is Princess Arya of the Vaylon Empire. Our escort is gone. We're surrounded. Please." Static swallowed her voice. Ryan pushed harder. He didn't know why, but something in that trembling voice made him move faster. The dropship broke through the clouds and came into sight of the royal transport, half buried in a crater. Its hull torn apart. Hundreds of enemy drones circled it like vultures, firing into the wreck. Without a word, Ryan grabbed his pulse rifle, sealed his helmet, and jumped out mid-hover. Wind roared in his ears as he hit the ground rolling, sparks flying from his armor. He opened fire, every shot precise. The drones exploded one by one, clean, fast, silent. He moved like a shadow through the smoke. By the time his team landed, most of the enemies were already down. Inside the broken transport, the air was thick with dust and fear. He found her, the alien princess, sitting in the corner, her silver blue dress torn, her crystal crown cracked. She raised a small blaster, her hands shaking. "Stay back. Human," she whispered, her voice sharp but weak. Ryan raised both hands slowly. "I'm not your enemy," he said, his tone calm and steady. "Your enemies are outside." "Mine too." She hesitated, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Her kind had never trusted humans, not after the wars. But when she looked into his eyes, steady, fearless, and tired, she saw something else. Something that didn't fit the stories her people told. Another explosion shook the wreck. Ryan moved instantly, pulling her down as the roof gave way. Metal fell around them. Sparks rained. His armor shielded her completely. She stared at him, shocked. "You protected me," she whispered. "That's the idea," he said with a small grin beneath his cracked visor. Outside, more drones approached, hundreds this time. His team's voices filled the comms. "Captain, we're surrounded." Ryan looked back at her. "Can you walk?" "Yes, but..." "No but, stay close." He handed her a small pulse pistol, her elegant fingers trembling as she took it. They moved out through the smoke, one human and one alien princess side by side, enemies all around. Sky burning red above, Ryan's rifle roared again. Each shot was a line of light cutting through chaos. He led her behind cover after cover. His armor dented bleeding energy. She fired too, badly at first, then sharper with each shot. For the first time in her life, she fought not from a throne but beside a soldier. The ground quaked as something massive landed behind them. A war mech, 10 meters tall, bristling with plasma cannons. The princess froze in fear. Ryan stepped forward, calm as ever. He aimed, took one breath, then fired a grenade into the mech's chest. It exploded in a blast of molten metal. She couldn't believe what she saw. One man, one human, destroying a machine that had killed hundreds of her guards. They reached the extraction zone, the dropship hovering above the flames. Ryan lifted her up first. She turned back to look at him, eyes wide with something new. Not fear, not mistrust, but awe. He climbed up after her. Just as the last explosion swallowed the battlefield, inside she removed her helmet, revealing glowing silver eyes. "You risked your life for me," she said quietly. Ryan shrugged, sitting down, exhausted. Anyone would have done the same. She looked at him longer, her gaze soft but deep. "No," she said slowly. "Only a human would say that." The dropship soared into the burning sky, carrying them away from war and into the unknown. Neither of them knew that this single act, one rescue under fire, would echo across the stars. By dawn, every empress in the galaxy would know his name, and all of them would want him, not for power, not for wealth, but for the one thing only humanity carried, courage that defied empires. News traveled faster than light. Across the star lanes, through encrypted channels, Every corner of the galactic net whispered the same thing. A human saved a princess, not just any princess, Princess Arya of the Valen Empire, heir to one of the oldest thrones in the galaxy, and the one who had sworn her people would never kneel to humankind again. Yet here she was, alive, safe and seen, stepping out of a human dropship. The galaxy gasped, empires held their breath, and every empress, ruler, and council across the stars turned their eyes toward the same man. Captain Ryan Hale, the human who defied orders, stormed a battlefield and walked out carrying royalty in his arms. In the command hall of the United Human Alliance, officers argued around a glowing hologram. He disobeyed protocol. One shouted, "He saved an alien monarch," said another. "He may have just started a war." But the High Commander only stared at the flickering image of Ryan leading the princess through fire. There was something in that scene. Something no order could predict. "Keep him quiet," the commander said finally, before the galaxy decides to crown him. Meanwhile, on the Valen capital, the royal court trembled. Arya's mother, the Empress herself, sat upon a throne of living crystal, her voice sharp, her expression unreadable. "A human touched royal blood," she said coldly. Her advisors bowed low, too afraid to breathe, but deep in her tone there was something else. Curiosity, maybe respect. She had seen the same footage as the rest of the galaxy. The human shielding her daughter, taking the blast meant for her, refusing to retreat. Few of her own warriors had shown such courage. The Empress sent envoys, secret messengers, gifts wrapped in silence, and she was not alone. From the frozen moons of Kithar, from the burning towers of Zerath Prime, from the floating palaces of Arian, other empresses began to send their offers. Each one wanted the same thing, an alliance with the human who had saved a princess. Some called it diplomacy, others called it desire, but across the stars, one truth echoed. The courage of a single human had become more valuable than any fleet. Ryan didn't know any of this yet. He was still in the recovery ward aboard the Alliance flagship Vanguard. His armor was gone, replaced with medical straps and sensors. The princess visited him daily, quiet but always watching. "You broke every order to save me," she said softly one evening. "Do you regret it?" Ryan smiled faintly, eyes half closed. "Not really," he said. "Regret doesn't help anyone." Her gaze softened. "Among my people, disobedience is punished," she whispered. "Among mine, it sometimes saves lives," he replied. Outside the medical bay, diplomats argued. The Valen demanded his transfer, claiming he was a hero of their empire. The Alliance refused, saying he was a soldier of Earth. Messages poured in from unknown sources, encrypted with royal seals, each one more urgent, more personal. One offered wealth, another offered land, and a third, the hand of an empress herself. When Ryan finally woke from his last treatment, a dozen security guards waited outside. The commander approached him with a forced smile. "Captain, congratulations," he said. "You're now the most wanted man in the galaxy." Ryan blinked, confused. "Wanted as in arrest?" The commander sighed. "Wanted as in every empress wants to marry you." Ryan stared for a long moment, then laughed softly. He didn't believe it, not really. But when he turned on the screen and saw the broadcasts, his name repeated in every alien tongue, his image standing beside Princess Arya, his courage replayed from every angle, he finally understood. The galaxy wasn't fascinated by his weapons or his rank. They were fascinated by him, by what he represented. A human who didn't fight for power but for principle. In the Valen Palace, Arya stood before her mother again. "Mother, he saved me," she said quietly. "He risked everything when he could have left me." The Empress regarded her daughter carefully. "You speak as if you admire him." Arya hesitated. "I do," she admitted. "He is unlike anyone I've ever known." The Empress leaned back, her eyes narrowing. "Then perhaps he is worth meeting," and far across the galaxy, other empresses whispered the same. The human's name echoed like thunder, Ryan Hale. The man who saved a princess and defied empires now. He was about to face something far more dangerous than war. Galactic politics, desire and power. The real battle was only beginning. And this time the weapon wasn't his rifle. It was his heart. The galaxy glittered like a crown of 1,000 worlds, and in every royal court, one name shimmered brighter than the stars. Captain Ryan Hale, the human who had walked through fire to save a princess. The story had spread beyond truth, retold in countless versions. each one more dramatic than the last. Some said he was a half-god who bent plasma with his hands. Others claimed his eyes could calm beasts from alien jungles. But one fact stayed constant. He had risked his life for someone not his own. Now royal envoys traveled from every empire, their ships draped in gold and light, each carrying messages sealed by empresses themselves. The Alliance dockyards became crowded with luxury cruisers. Human officers whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. "Why are they all here?" "To see the human," someone answered softly. "To claim him," said another. Ryan sat quietly in his quarters, staring at the holographic letters that floated before him. Each bore a royal crest, symbols of power older than humanity's first colony. One from the Arion Dominion, promising eternal wealth and a seat beside the Empress. Another from the Kethar sovereignty, offering command over a fleet larger than Earth's entire navy. And one, sealed in silver light, came directly from Arya's mother, the Velan Empress. Her words were short but heavy. "Come to my court. Human, the stars owe you a debt." Ryan exhaled slowly. Running a hand over his face, he wasn't used to royal attention. He was a soldier, not a symbol. But everywhere he turned, reporters and diplomats followed to the galaxy. He was no longer just a man. He was an idea. A human who broke the rules of war and won the hearts of monarchs. That night, Princess Arya found him sitting on the observation deck. The stars reflected in the glass like scattered diamonds. "You look tired," she said softly, stepping closer. "I'm surrounded by people who want something," Ryan replied. "What do you want?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. He smiled faintly. "Peace," he said. "But I don't think the galaxy knows what that means anymore." She sat beside him, her voice calm but uncertain. "My mother wants to meet you." "I know," he said. "And I think half the galaxy wants to too." Arya's expression changed, and a mix of pride and worry. "Be careful, Ryan," she whispered. "Some of them don't want to meet you. They want to own you." The next day, the Alliance Command decided to send Ryan as a representative to the Velan court. Officially, it was called a diplomatic meeting, but every soldier in the fleet knew it was more than that. As his shuttle descended toward the shining crystal palace of Vela, crowds gathered beneath, waving banners, chanting his name. A human name in the heart of alien royalty. The great hall of the Empress shimmered with living light. The floor reflected galaxies. The ceiling breathed clouds of energy. And upon the throne sat Empress Sereth Vela, draped in liquid gold, her presence commanding yet graceful. When Ryan stepped forward, every guard raised their weapons. But the Empress lifted her hand. "Let him pass," she said, her voice echoing like thunder wrapped in silk. He bowed slightly, not as a servant, but as a soldier showing respect. "You saved my daughter," she said slowly. "I did what I had to," Ryan replied. "No human has ever entered my palace alive," the Empress said, her tone sharp. "But you arrive as a hero." She stood, walking around him like a storm circling calm water. Her eyes studied his face, his scars, his posture. "You risked your life without knowing her," she said. "Why?" Ryan looked up, his voice steady. "Because life, any life, is worth saving." The hall went silent. Even the crystal walls seemed to pause. And for the first time in centuries, the Empress of Vela smiled. "A human who values life more than politics," she murmured. "No wonder the other empresses want you." At that very moment, across the stars, the other queens watched through hidden feeds. Each one felt the same thing: jealousy, fascination, hunger. If the Velan Empress claimed him, the balance of power would shift. The Kethar queen slammed her crystal cup against the table. "The Velans will not take him," she hissed. "Prepare a summons." The Aryan Empress leaned back on her golden throne, her eyes like fire. "If they want him through politics," she whispered, "I will take him through desire." And far away, Ryan stood in that grand hall, unaware that his rescue had turned into a storm. One act of compassion had started a galactic race, not for power, but for him. A single human standing at the crossroads of empires and behind her mother's throne. Princess Arya watched silently, her heart torn. She knew the Empress's smile was dangerous, because in the galaxy of crowns and thrones, nothing was ever given freely. Everything had a cost, even love. The galaxy had seen wars, rebellions, and empires rise and fall, but it had never seen this. A single human, A soldier from a small blue world, standing at the center of interstellar attention. Captain Ryan Hale had become a living legend, a name whispered in the royal chambers of every empress. 3 solar days after his audience with the Valen Empress, the offers began to arrive, each one more dazzling, more dangerous than the last. The Kyther Empress sent a fleet of diamond warships to orbit above Earth's moon. Their captain carried a message carved into light. Accept our bond, Captain Hale, and the sovereignty will name you Warlord of Kythar, protector of our skies. The Arion Empress sent a personal envoy, a woman dressed in shimmering black silk, her eyes glowing with violet fire. She knelt before him and spoke softly. Her Majesty offers you eternity. Human, she said. She will share her throne, her power and her heart if you will only call her name. Even the silent Queen of the Orinth, who had not spoken to another ruler in 2 centuries, sent him a single message and only 7 words, "Come to me, and the stars are yours." Ryan read every message carefully. Sitting alone in his quarters, the golden light from his desk reflected across his tired eyes. He wasn't used to this. Power, flattery, temptation. He had faced monsters and machines, but never politics dressed in beauty. He didn't trust it. He didn't want to be a prize in a galactic game. Princess Arya found him there, the screen still glowing. "You've become the most desired man in the stars," she said quietly. Half teasing, half worried, Ryan smirked weakly. "And somehow, it doesn't feel like an honor." She sat beside him, her silver hair brushing against his arm. "Be careful, Ryan," she whispered. "None of them are offering love. They are offering ownership." Her words cut deep. He looked at her, really looked. And for a moment, the war, the fame, and the noise outside faded into silence. Later that night, he was summoned again to the Valen throne chamber. Empress Serath stood before a wall of moving light, each image showing the faces of other empresses. "Do you see what you've caused, human?" she said, her voice both proud and cold. Ryan nodded slowly. "I didn't mean to start anything." "That is the curse of heroes," she replied. "They rarely mean to change the world, yet they always do." The Empress stepped closer, her gaze sharp as a blade. "Tell me, human," she asked softly, "if you were given power beyond imagining, the power to rule beside an empress, when would you take it?" Ryan met her eyes without fear. "No," he said simply. "Power without peace means nothing." Her lips curved into a small smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. "You truly are dangerous," she murmured, "because you are not driven by what drives the rest of us." At that very moment, a distant ripple moved through the palace, a tremor of light in the air, a message broadcast from deep space. The face of the Arion Empress appeared across every royal channel, her tone dripping with confidence. "I, Empress Naira of Arion, declare my intention to unite with the human Ryan Hale," she said. "Any who stand in my way will face the wrath of Arion's fleets." Gasps filled every hall. It was the first open declaration, a galactic proposal broadcast live. It wasn't just a courtship, it was a claim, a political move that could shatter the balance between empires. Ryan stood frozen as diplomats flooded the room. Shouting, Arya's hand gripped his sleeve. "She's declaring war," she whispered. "Over you." Ryan looked at the hologram again, his jaw tightening. "I didn't ask for any of this," he said quietly. "But maybe it's time someone ended it." The Valen Empress studied him carefully. "End it?" she repeated. "How?" "By reminding them I'm not a prize," he said. "I'm human." Outside the palace, fleets began to move. Kythar warships lit their engines. Arian cruisers shifted formation across the stars. Monarchs prepared for conflict. Not over resources, not over borders, but over one man. In the silence of the observation deck, Princess Arya stood beside Ryan, the stars burning like witnesses around them. "You can't face them all," she whispered. He looked out at the endless galaxy, his voice low but steady. "I won't have to," he said. "If I show them what being human really means." The light from distant suns reflected in his eyes. The soldier who once saved one life was now about to challenge entire empires. Not with weapons, but with truth. And somewhere deep within the halls of the Valen Palace, the Empress watched him go, her expression unreadable. For the first time, even she didn't know whether she wanted to rule him or follow him. The galaxy waited, every star system, every palace, every fleet hung in silence for the first time in centuries. The royal networks carried the same message. The human will speak. Captain Ryan Hale stood before the Galactic Council. A vast circular chamber where light floated instead of walls. Thousands of voices whispered his name. Some in admiration, some in envy, and some in fear. On the high seats sat the empresses, each veiled in power, beauty, and danger. The air itself trembled with their presence. The galaxy's most powerful beings, waiting for a single human's decision. A holographic symbol of Earth shimmered beside him, small compared to the Empire's banners. Ryan took a slow breath. His armor was gone, replaced by simple black uniform. No medals, no rank, just a man, but when he spoke, his voice carried through the chamber like thunder wrapped in calm. "I didn't come here to choose," he said. "I didn't come to take a throne or command your fleets. I came here to remind you of something you've forgotten." The Empress of Kithar leaned forward, her diamond crown glowing faintly. "And what would that be, human?" she asked with a sly smile. "That courage doesn't belong to royalty," Ryan said. "It belongs to those who bleed for others, even when no one's watching." The hall fell silent. Every translator drone hummed softly, turning his words into 100 alien languages. Ryan continued, his voice steady. "When I saved Princess Arya, I didn't think about politics or empires or power. I thought about a person who was going to die, and I made a choice, because that's what humans do." Across the chamber, Arya sat beside her mother, the Valen Empress, her hands clenched. Eyes bright with emotion, he wasn't speaking for applause. He was speaking because the galaxy needed to hear it. "You rule millions, you command worlds," Ryan said. "But somewhere along the way, you all forgot what life means. You trade lives like currency. But courage, real courage, doesn't come from crowns. It comes from the ones who protect without expecting reward." The Arion Empress, proud and radiant, rose slowly. "You refuse me," she said coldly. "You refuse all of us for what? Honor? Modesty?" Ryan met her gaze without fear. "For freedom," he said. "The same freedom I fought for. The same freedom every world deserves." The chamber shook with murmurs. Even the most hardened rulers shifted in their seats. For a moment it felt as if time itself had paused to listen. Then from the shadows the silent Queen of Orinth stood, her voice a whisper that echoed like wind through eternity. "Perhaps," she said softly, "the human is right. We have forgotten what it means to fight for something beyond ourselves." The words struck like lightning. An empress agreeing with a human. It had never happened before. The other rulers looked at each other for the first time, not with rivalry, but with reflection. Arya stood slowly, her heart racing. "My people once called humans reckless," she said, her voice trembling but proud. "But maybe recklessness is another word for bravery." She turned to the council, her eyes glowing with conviction. "If a human can risk everything for a stranger, then what excuse do we, the rulers of galaxies, have?" The chamber erupted in light. Some shouted, some cheered, some simply stared, but no one could deny it. Something had changed. The galaxy that once saw humanity as fragile now saw it as a mirror, a reminder of what they had lost long ago. After the session ended, Ryan stood on the balcony overlooking the twin suns of the capital. Arya joined him quietly. "You turned down every empress," she said with a small smile. "You know they won't forget that," Ryan chuckled softly. "I didn't want to be remembered as someone who took a crown," he said. "I'd rather be remembered as someone who gave them something better. A conscience." She looked at him for a long moment, the light of the suns reflecting in her eyes. "Do you ever regret saving me that day?" she asked gently. He smiled. Not for a second. Behind them, the banners of the empires fluttered in the artificial wind, but something in the air had changed. The galaxy had witnessed not a soldier, not a lover, not a savior, but a human. And for the first time in living memory, the rulers of worlds began to wonder if perhaps it wasn't power that made them strong, but the courage to care. The stars had grown quiet after the council, but peace in the galaxy was like a glass bridge, beautiful to look at, easy to break. For weeks, Ryan Hale's speech rippled across every empire. On distant worlds, common people spoke his name with hope. They painted his symbol on banners. They repeated his words to their children. "Courage isn't born from crowns, it lives in hearts," they said. But not everyone saw him as a hero. In the dark halls of the Kithar citadel, whispers turned to venom. The nobles gathered around a silver table, faces hidden by holographic masks. That human has humiliated our empress, one hissed. He made her look weak before the galaxy, another voice growled. He's not a man. He's a weapon, and weapons can be broken. The Council of Traitors raised their glasses in the shadows. To restoring order, they said coldly. Even if we must destroy the man who defied thrones. On Vela, where Ryan had taken quiet refuge, the days passed in uneasy calm. He spent his time helping rebuild war-torn districts, fixing machines, teaching alien children how to read Earth languages. He had no guards, no armor, no ranks, just a purpose. But Princess Arya watched him every day, and she knew peace couldn't last. Your speech changed the galaxy, she told him one evening, as they watched twin moons rise. Change frightens those who live by control. Ryan nodded slowly. Then they'll come for me, he said, and I'll face them. That night the storm came. A fleet of Caithar stealth ships slipped through the black skies, their engines silent, their weapons armed. Inside the palace, alarms wailed too late. Ryan woke to the sound of explosions. The walls shuddered, the air burned. Guards fell as shadow-clad assassins breached the corridors, blades humming with blue plasma. He grabbed his old pulse rifle. Armor half-sealed, Arya ran toward him. Fear and fire in her eyes. They're here for you, she shouted. Then they'll have to get through me first, he said. Together they moved through smoke-filled halls. He fired with deadly precision, covering her as they ran. Every step echoed with chaos, screams, energy blasts, and falling stone. But Ryan's heart stayed steady. This wasn't war for glory, it was survival. Outside, under the burning night, Caithar troops surrounded the courtyard. Ryan led Arya behind a shattered pillar. We're cut off, she said breathlessly. Not yet, he replied. Eyes locked on a downed gunship nearby. He dashed into open fire, plasma bolts slicing the air around him. Arya shouted after him, but he didn't stop. He jumped onto the wreckage, rerouting power cables with bare hands. Sparks burned across his arms, his armor glowed red. Ryan, she screamed. He turned the ship's weapon toward the attackers and fired. The courtyard lit up like a newborn sun. When the light faded, the ground was littered with smoke and silence. Ryan dropped to his knees, breathing hard. His armor cracked and sparking. Arya rushed to him, her hands trembling as she pulled off his helmet. You're insane, she whispered, her voice breaking. He smiled faintly through blood and soot. Maybe, but it worked. As reinforcements arrived, the last assassin crawled from the rubble. A dying Caithar noble, his mask shattered. Revealing sharp silver eyes, he looked up at Ryan and hissed. You think you brought peace, human, he spat. But peace built on fear never lasts. Ryan stared down at him, voice calm but cold. Then maybe it's time someone built it on hope instead. The noble laughed weakly before falling silent forever. In the distance, the palace guards saluted. But Ryan didn't feel like a hero. He felt the heavy truth and that peace would never come easily. Not in a galaxy that feared compassion as much as it feared war. Later, as dawn broke over Vela, the twin suns rose again, painting the sky gold. Ryan stood beside Arya on the balcony, his armor in pieces, his body aching. She looked at him, eyes full of questions she couldn't ask. You could leave, Ryan, she said softly. You've done more than enough. He shook his head slowly. I didn't start this to walk away, he said. If they fear what I represent, then I'll give them something stronger to believe in. Far beyond the horizon, fleets stirred again. The old powers would regroup, and others would rise, but now, for the first time, whispers of rebellion carried not hate, but hope. And at the heart of it all stood one man, a soldier who had once rescued a single alien princess and, in doing so, had begun rescuing an entire galaxy from itself. The dawn that followed was not quiet. It carried whispers of change, of fear, and of hope. Every broadcast across the galaxy repeated the same image. A human standing in the ruins of battle, holding the Empress's daughter safe in his arms. That picture traveled faster than any fleet, faster than any rumor, and for the first time in history, the word human was spoken with respect, not pity. Captain Ryan Hale had survived the assassination attempt, but something inside him had changed. He had seen how far the powerful would go to protect their pride, and how far the powerless would go to protect their faith in him. Now he understood, and this was no longer about one rescue or one princess. It was about the soul of the galaxy itself. In the great chamber of the Valen Palace, the Empress sat alone. The sunlight streamed through the crystal roof, scattering colors like shattered stars. When Ryan entered, she looked up, her expression unreadable. "You survived," she said simply. "Barely," he replied. "Good," she murmured. "Because your survival has shaken thrones." She rose from her seat, her gown shimmering like liquid gold. "Do you know why the other empresses want you human?" she asked. Ryan shook his head slowly. "I thought they wanted a symbol, someone to use," the Empress gave a soft, bitter laugh. "No," she said. "They wanted a reminder." She turned, her eyes glowing faintly as she gestured toward the stars beyond the window. Thousands of years ago, before the empires, before the treaties, there was a prophecy. Ryan frowned slightly. "A prophecy?" "Yes," she said, her voice almost a whisper now. "It spoke of a species lost to the stars, forgotten, underestimated. Fragile in body but infinite in spirit." She looked at him, her gaze piercing through every wall of logic. It said that when the empires would rot from pride, when thrones would turn to cages, one from the forgotten world would rise, not to rule, but to remind. Ryan was silent for a long moment. He didn't believe in destiny, he believed in choices, in small acts that built meaning. But as he stood there, hearing her words echo through the crystal hall, he couldn't deny the weight of them. "So you think that's me?" he asked quietly. The Empress smiled faintly. "I don't think it human," she said. "I know it. Outside, ships from a dozen empires began to arrive, not in war, but in truce. The Empresses of Kethar, Arion, and Orinth descended together for the first time in recorded history. Their banners flew side by side above the palace. The galaxy held its breath again, this time not for a battle, but for something more impossible, unity." Ryan stood before them all. No crown, no armor, no power but his voice. He looked at the gathered rulers and said simply, "I am not your savior. I am not your enemy. I am just human. But if a single act of mercy can change a world, then imagine what we could do together." The silence that followed was endless. Then, one by one, the empresses bowed their heads, not to a ruler, not to a soldier, but to a man who had reminded them of what it meant to care. Princess Aria stepped forward, her eyes bright with tears. She took Ryan's hand, holding it high before the gathered crowd. "Then let this be the beginning," she said proudly. "Not of a new empire, but of a new hope." The crowd erupted in light. From every balcony, from every world, the same chant rose: "Humanity lives." It wasn't a declaration of dominance, but of awakening. Humans had returned to the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as the fire that reignited compassion. Years passed, and the Treaty of Hail became the foundation of peace across the stars. Humans were no longer seen as relics or strays. They became diplomats, teachers, explorers. The galaxy changed, not because of power, but because one man dared to act like power didn't matter. In his final years, Ryan walked among alien cities that once feared his kind. Children, human and alien alike, ran through the streets. Flags of every color fluttered side by side. He smiled softly, watching them. "Maybe this was the real victory," he said quietly. Aria, now crowned as the Empress of the Unified Worlds, stood beside him. "Not victory," she said gently. "Legacy." As the twin suns set, the light bathed them both in gold, and somewhere, among the whispers of starlight and memory, the old prophecy fulfilled itself completely. Not through power, not through war, but through one simple truth, that humanity's greatest strength was never its weapons. It was its heart, and as long as that heart burned, the galaxy would never forget the name Ryan Hale, the human who taught the stars to feel again,